Episode 1 begins with a young man selling his soul to capitalism every day. His coworker invites him to go for a drink, but with a pile of deadlines, the protagonist refused. Besides, there was no one at home waiting to ask him, "Honey, dinner first, or me first?" So the protagonist decided to stay and finish his work. Unexpectedly, he was exhausted from overworking and dazed. On the way home, he mistook a red traffic light for green and carelessly crossed the street. And so, a speeding truck gave him a loving kiss, ending his life and reincarnating him into another world. In this new world, our protagonist, now named Shin, begins his life at the age of 8. He lives in a desolate forest with his diligent grandfather figure, Merlin, who raised him all by himself. Shin's daily hobby is running through the forest, hunting wild boars and pheasants for dinner with his stealthy bush-hiding skills. Combined with precise attacks, he never misses his target, often bringing home plump pheasants. Clearly, this wasn't his first hunt. He excitedly ran back to show his grandpa his prize, and Shin grinned with delight when praised. In just one hunting trip, he had caught 3 pheasants and a huge boar, enough to fill the bellies of the 2 of them, even with their giant appetites. In this world, magic exists, completely different from his previous world. From a young age, Shin was carefully taught by his grandpa, so even at just 8 years old, he had already mastered basic spells. Moreover, his grandpa made him practice them over and over, every day. It would be hard not to master them. Since he was a kid, Shin could blast fire, making people worry if he would grow up to be a menace or not. One special thing Shin realized after learning magic is that as long as he could clearly imagine it, he could cast spells without chanting, long incantations. It's so contradictory and funny to think that if you don't call out the spell's name, it won't work, or that mispronouncing it would result in a different move. So weird. As he was marveling at his own discoveries, which were truly magnificent, 2 figures slowly approached from a distance. Upon learning that an 8-year-old child was freely running around hunting wild boars, Melinda's eyes went wide and she snapped at Shin, yelling, "Who allowed you to do something so dangerous? If the boar found you hiding in the bushes and gored you, you wouldn't get a second chance at reincarnation. You know, dude." But Shin just put on his most innocent face to comfort Melinda, saying, "Oh, Grandma, don't worry. The magic shoes you and I made before helped me run fast, like crazy. No 4-legged boar could ever catch me." This left Melinda speechless, and she could only scold the kid. To vent her frustration, Merlin had to step in to make peace and reassure Melinda that with Shin's magical abilities, this forest is just his backyard. You know full well what Shin's skills are like, so don't worry so much you get more wrinkles. Michel, who taught the kids swordsmanship, couldn't help but be surprised. After all, for an 8-year-old boy, to take down a wild boar was quite astonishing, and could even be considered a great feat, worth being proud of. After beating around the bush, the final conclusion was that his training sessions would have to be even harsher from now on. This left little Shin speechless. What kind of dirty trick is this? If you want to play like that, play by yourself, old man. Before you know it, time skips ahead 2 years. Shin, now 10, was taken by his grandpa to exterminate a magic beast. For the first time, as they walked, his grandpa explained that this world is full of magical power, and every living creature can inherit that power. But if they can't control it, the creature will become ferocious and attack everything, no matter what. That's what's called a demon. Even humans are no exception. Speaking of which, Shin remembered his grandpa once telling him that a long time ago, a person actually turned into a demon and destroyed an entire nation. It was his own grandpa who stepped in to save that nation and became a hero, a legend to this day. Mentioning this great deed made Merlin burst out laughing happily. The grandpa and grandson chatted as they walked, so they quickly reached a high cliff overlooking the area below. You could see the entire vast, sprawling forest. Now it was time for Merlin to lightly flex his great magical power for his grandson to admire and learn from. He said to gently release a source of magical energy around you. If there's another source nearby, you'll be able to sense it immediately because every living creature contains a source of magical energy. Even if it runs, that magical energy source won't change. This is called a tracking spell. Just a second ago, he was comforting his grandson, saying it's okay if he can't do it on the first try, because this spell requires you to have good control over your magical energy. But the next second, the boy perfectly replicated what his grandpa taught him, easy peasy, on the very first try. Not only that, but he extended it all the way to Melinda's house and could sense every source of magic, big and small, even the tiniest ones. The kid could detect them all, causing Merlin's brain to freeze for 5 seconds. It was a bit embarrassing, but discovering his grandson was a genius made it all worthwhile. Shin quickly sensed a strange magical energy that made him extremely uncomfortable. Merlin explained that it was the magical energy of a demon, which made Shin eager to find and destroy it. The kid was worried that if they just left it, something bad would happen. Merlin also sensed that this demon was very dangerous, so they both rushed over. This time, the demon was a ferocious bear, surrounded by a layer of crimson, deadly aura. Before he could be stopped, his battle-hungry grandson drew his sword and charged forward. He charged at the demon. It seemed like it was all over, the end of the movie. But who would have guessed that with just an ordinary sword and a bit of speed magic enchanted on his shoes, the kid quickly lopped off the demon's head in a flash. To Merlin's astonishment, the old man was so lost in thought that the kid had to call him several times to snap him out of it. The purpose of the trip was for the kid to see what a demon looked like. Who knew that on his first try, he would thrash the demon like it was nothing, leaving Merlin completely stunned. When he asked what kind of magic was enchanted on the sword and shoes he used, the kid just gave an awkward laugh and brushed it off. That evening, the three old folks sat down together and Merlin recounted the morning's events, how Shin had defeated a demon bear without any of his help. As expected, when they heard, everyone was so shocked they froze. Melinda held her forehead, unable to believe someone like that kid could even exist. How could someone who masters magic at such a dizzying speed also keep up with Michel's combat skills? And on top of that, invent his own way of enchanting every move? It's so weird. If you told her the kid was from another world, she'd believe it in a heartbeat. Although she was also curious and realized her grandson was strange, Merlin didn't mind. As long as little Shin looked at him and called him Grandpa, in that cute way, that was more than enough. Merlin truly saw Shin as his own flesh and blood grandson, loving and cherishing him. Hearing Merlin's sappy words, Melinda couldn't help but take the opportunity to tease him until he blushed. Even Michel joined in, roasting Merlin. Back in his youth, he was a total menace, and now he's become a wise sage, a great one at that. Unbelievable. Anything can happen in life. They were just teasing, of course. Melinda also saw Shin as her own grandson, even though she only visited occasionally. The next morning, as Shin was fending off Michel's increasingly harsh attacks, Merlin interrupted and invited the boy to a cliff for a heart-to-heart. He decided to reveal the secret to Shin, that he wasn't his biological grandson. 15 years ago, while walking in the forest on a rainy night, he stumbled upon the carriage of the boy's parents, which had been attacked by a demon. Their bodies were no longer intact, and the carriage was destroyed. Only Shin, a baby, miraculously survived, despite being buried in the wreckage, crying his eyes out. The rain had lowered the baby's body temperature, so the demon didn't notice him. Merlin felt very guilty for only now telling Shin the truth about his origins, but it turned out the kid had known for a long time. I even remember stuff from my past life, let alone my childhood. What's so hard about that? But speaking of the demon from years ago, Merlin believed it was the same one that, a few days prior, Shin had beheaded. It was truly fate. In the end, it was the boy himself, who avenged his own parents' tragic deaths. He suddenly wondered who his parents really were and where they came from. What if they were nobles? Wouldn't that mean he had a whole fortune waiting for him? But Merlin was very sorry to say that back then, the scene was so gruesome that he couldn't find any clues to identify Shin's parents. Even so, Shin didn't care much about finding out his true identity. Right now, he had a grandfather who took care of his every need, plus a grandmother who, despite her nagging, loved him very much, and a teacher who taught him swordsmanship. A life like this was already wonderful, so Shin couldn't ask for more. Hearing his adorable grandson's heartfelt words and thanks for not abandoning him, Merlin couldn't hold back his tears and just burst out sobbing. Another skip, 5 years later. By the laws of this world, Shin was now an adult and a coming-of-age ceremony was held for him. Today's gathering included not only Merlin, Melinda, and Michel, but also Merlin's friends who would visit Shin from time to time. Now that he was an adult, he could no longer freeload off his grandpa, so Diziem wanted to ask him what he planned to do for a living. Who would have thought that because he spent all his time in the forest, Shin had no idea how people in the outside world made a living? Diziem and the others were speechless at the kid's naivete and recommended a few professions like demon hunter, or joining the royal army, or a magic tool blacksmith, because considering his physical or magical abilities, Shin would be accepted anywhere. After some back and forth, it also came out that Shin had never even been to a market, let alone earned or spent money. Faced with everyone's astonished gazes, Merlin could only scratch his head sheepishly and act cute, saying he accidentally forgot to teach his grandson how to enjoy life. It's nothing, don't be so tense. Heh. Shin realized that up until now, he had only been taught about magic, and was clueless about everything else. In the middle of eating, suddenly, the whole group went to a vast, empty field using a magical anywhere door. So weird, just like that blue raccoon thing's. This was a teleportation spell the kid invented himself. Seeing it for the first time, everyone was very surprised, but the thing that would really blow their minds was still to come. Michel wondered why they didn't finish eating before running out here. What's the deal, you guys? It turned out Merlin wanted to flex his grandson's power, and mysteriously warned them that when they saw it, don't you dare pass out. Merlin wanted Shin to demonstrate the power he used on his graduation exam. He was a bit hesitant, but if his grandpa wanted to show off, then I'll make sure your reputation soars to the heavens. He summoned a magic circle with specks of blue fire surrounding it, which then gathered in his hand. A blue flame that gathered all the oxygen to one point, making the flame even more intense. After a series of flashy explanations, he fired a boom towards the distant hill, shaking the heavens and the earth, forcing everyone nearby to brace themselves or be blown away by the wind. On top of that, the move was accompanied by deadly lightning strikes. As expected, this display made the onlookers' jaws drop. Diziem grabbed Merlin by the collar and furiously interrogated him. Did you ever teach the boy humility? bringing this kind of power out into the world will cause huge trouble, you idiot. Merlin could only make excuses, saying he just wanted to see what the boy was capable of. Don't be so tense. Don't be so tense. When they returned to the table, Diziem wondered if they could really let the boy integrate into the outside world with that terrifyingly destructive move. Plus, there's the void teleportation spell and the swordsmanship skills Michel taught him. Releasing him into the outside world would lead to competition between countries, maybe even start a conflict. The situation was looking very bad. It seemed entirely possible he might have to live in the forest as a bump on a log for his whole life and never be allowed out. Diziem suddenly suggested letting Shin attend his magic academy. Merlin's face darkened. Wouldn't that mean Shin would be joining Diziem's nation, or what? But Diziem swore he wouldn't use him for military purposes, and that the magic academy was just so he could learn more about the outside world. Plus, it was so the kid could make friends, because at his age, not having a single friend was truly a disadvantage. After much persuasion, Merlin finally agreed to let Shin attend the Magic Academy in Diziem's country. But he suddenly found that phrase, Diziem's country, a bit odd. What did that mean? It turned out, despite visiting so often, the uncle never bothered to introduce himself as the King of Earlshide, and Christina and Siegfried were a knight from the royal guard and a royal court magician, respectively. Before, he was having fun with everyone, but now the tables had turned, and he was completely shocked. The kid realized that everyone sitting here had once been a high-ranking government official, sky high. Uncle Michel was once the commander of the Night Order. Melinda shot Merlin a sideways glance and saw that he really hadn't told the kid anything about the outside world at all. Even though he's a king, Diziem comes here every now and then because when he was young, his nation was almost destroyed by a demonoid, and he himself would have died in that final battle, if not for the timely arrival of Merlin and Melinda. After that, the two became the saviors of the entire kingdom, and became friends with Diziem. Since then, every time the uncle visits, he listens to them complain about everything. Under the Sunday, Diziem is very happy that even knowing he's a king, Shin still treats him very normally, basically because the kid is so used to him, like a close relative. Going from one surprise to another, Shin thought Merlin and Melinda were just teammates. Who would have guessed they were also a legally married couple? He felt like he could just disappear. Half a month later, the three of them had to move to the capital, so Shin could take the entrance exam and enroll. On the way, he wondered about their house in the capital, how big it was. Merlin didn't know either, because the house was provided by the government. It had been a long time since he'd returned to the capital, so Merlin had to pull out a pile of identification papers. When the gatekeeper realized the two of them were the Sage and the Guru, the saviors of the empire, he excitedly roared. As soon as the people overheard the words Guru and Sage, they immediately rushed towards Merlin. Fearing trouble, he urged the gatekeeper to hurry up so they could slip away. But rumors about the Sage's grandson had already spread throughout the city. Finally arriving at the mansion, Shin had to admit the building was truly huge. Welcoming them were countless servants, a butler, and a headmaid. As soon as he arrived in the capital, the kid zipped out to see the city streets. He went into a small alley and suddenly heard screams for help. Episode 2. After defeating the gang of thugs and successfully rescuing two beautiful girls, Shin was invited by them for coffee and a chat. If only meeting girls in real life was this easy. That would be great, wouldn't it, bros? Shin thought to himself. A red-haired girl introduced herself as Maria, while the blue-haired girl with a gentle, soft soul was Sicily. According to regulations, they couldn't casually use magic in public places, otherwise those thugs would have been roasted to a crisp long ago. It turns out Maria and Sicily were applying to the Magic Academy. Coincidentally, Shin had the same plan, although the truth was the main reason was because the old folks at home insisted on it, since his skills had already surpassed the professors at that so-called academy. With Shin's proficiency in both martial arts and magic, both girls thought he should attend the Night Academy instead. Our protagonist was so used to praise that he didn't even blush or act shy like other young men. The trio shook hands and wished each other luck on next month's exam. Little Maria even boasted that she would aim for the top spot. The old folks have a saying, don't count your chickens before they hatch. With Shin around, she could just grab a pillow and dream on. Meanwhile, Sicily sat quietly, perhaps already imagining which wedding dress to rent and what to name their future children, preferably a handsome name like their father's. She jumped when Shin held out his hand to shake hers, her face redder than a lobster, as if touching hands would get her pregnant instantly. After a bit of chatting, Shin learned that Maria was a die-hard fan of the Sage, Merlin, and the Guru, Melinda, and curiously asked about their rumored grandson, completely unaware that he was sitting right in front of her. Not wanting to reveal his identity and deal with unnecessary trouble, Shin said his goodbyes after secretly paying the bill. Gentlemen, take out your notebooks and take notes. Quick. Sicily seems to have been struck by love at first sight for Shin. When Maria teased that she would steal Shin from her, the girl immediately got all huffy. She's head over heels but pretends it's just a thrilling feeling, a fast, strong heartbeat, and a body heating up. Very similar to the symptoms of being all hot and bothered. Careful you don't ovulate right in the middle of the street, girl. The day of the entrance exam arrived. Shin was surprised by the large number of candidates. He went to the information board to find his exam room when some random punk came looking for trouble. Pissed off because Shin completely ignored him, he grabbed his shoulder, intending to teach him a lesson. But before he could do anything, Shin threw him to the ground. You could hear the loud crack all the way from Vietnam. His name is Kurt, and his hair is also crap-colored. It was the first time someone had treated him like nothing, so Kurt was saltier than a chili pepper. This power-tripping punk thought being the eldest son of the von Ritzberg family was a big deal. But sorry, Shin here is the director's favorite and the grandson of the two sages, and Guru, the top in the world, you know. Just then, a handsome guy with dashing hair came over and recited a series of laws about punishing those who use their status to bully others, scaring Kurt so bad he pissed his pants and left in a huff. Turns out, this was Prince August of this kingdom. Despite his noble status, Shin called him Dzeum's son. The prince burst out laughing, amused because this was the first time he'd been called that. The two had only just met for the first time, but they hit it off like they were cousins. The entrance exam at the Magic Academy would have two parts. First was the written exam. While the other candidates were racking their brains and scribbling away, our boy Shin passed it with ease. The second part was the practical exam. The candidate's task was to use magic to destroy these metal pillars. Shin found it very interesting because this was the first time he'd seen people his age use magic. But their magic was so weird. Every single one of them was flailing around like crazy, but their attacks were so weak, they couldn't even kill a fly, let alone destroy such a huge metal pillar. And yet, they all looked so satisfied with themselves. Life is truly hard to understand. Well then, let me show you darlings a little something so you can see what real magic is. The proctor already knew Shin's true identity, so she told him to hold back his power, otherwise the academy would have to spend money rebuilding the walls. Our boy Shin didn't even need to chant, and still created a huge explosion, easily destroying the target, to the utter astonishment of the other candidates. If he's this strong while holding back, I can't imagine how strong he is when he's serious. And the exam results were very predictable. Shin was this year's top student, the proctor said. The top student had to prepare a speech to represent the new students at the opening ceremony. But the problem was, this guy sucked at writing. He was about to pass this noble responsibility to Prince August, but who in their right mind would willingly take on more work? August started his spiel about how it's a fine and long-standing tradition of the academy, that at the academy there's no class discrimination, it's all based on individual effort, and the royal family is no exception. Yeah, some best friend you are. More like every man for himself. If you're so good at writing, why don't you help your friend with the speech, dude? Everyone happily acknowledged and admired Shin's rare talent. Only that shithead Kurt had been salty since the morning. Looks like Shin hit him too lightly, so he's not scared yet. Although the uniforms provided by the academy were already equipped with high-level charms, Shin felt they weren't powerful enough, so he added a few more of his own. Even the wise guru had to exclaim in surprise at the pile of top-tier charms on his uniform. On the day of the opening ceremony, Shin was escorted to the gate by his grandparents. The other students quickly recognized the two as the great sage and guru and rushed towards them. His grandparents were surrounded like teen idols, while their poor grandson, the top student with a bit of fame himself, was completely ignored and shoved out of the crowd. It was time for the opening ceremony to begin. The MC introduced Shin to come up and give a speech on behalf of the new students to the whole school. Today was the first time Maria and Sicily heard Shin's full name, Shin Walford, and they were shocked to their core to learn that he was the grandson of the two great sages and guru. It turned out the idol they had been curious about for so long was their own friend. The opening ceremony was a success. Everyone had happy, joyful expressions on their faces. But that shithead Kurt, sitting below, saw Shin on stage and his eyes burned with jealousy, bulged and he gnashed his teeth like a rabid dog. Shin's group was all placed in Class S, which was the most elite, top-tier class in this academy. After school, Maria and Sicily called Shin out to the hallway to ask for his help regarding a certain punk who had been stalking Sicily lately. Even though she had rejected him many times, that guy still used his family background to threaten her. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. The creep who had been stalking Sicily lately was none other than Kurt. He scolded Sicily because she dared to talk to another boy and declared himself her fiancé. Sicily was trembling like a leaf in fear, but Shin encouraged her. Don't worry, sweetie. As long as I'm here, this mutt won't be able to touch a single hair on your head. At that moment, Sicily bravely retorted. You piece of crap, you've been rejected time and time again. Don't you know when to go home crying to your mommy? You just keep tailing me. This guy's face must be thicker than concrete. Salty that he couldn't do anything to Sicily because she had Shin protecting her, he threatened to go tell his dad to get Sicily's father, who works at the Ministry of Finance, fired. August stood there, enjoying the drama, at the door, giving Shin a chance to show off for the girl. Seeing the prince appear, Kurt suddenly got scared and left in a huff. Shin offered to invite everyone to visit his house. Meeting the two great sages and guru in real life made the whole group completely petrified. Holy crap! Shin asked his grandparents for permission to change the enchantments on Sicily's uniform to ensure her safety, but Grandma Melinda suddenly spoke harshly, saying Sicily was not worthy to receive it because it had become a national treasure-level item. Hearing this, Sicily quickly apologized to the old woman for taking advantage of Shin's kindness and stood up, intending to leave. But it turned out to be just a test from the grandmother to her potential granddaughter-in-law. If Sicily had just silently accepted Shin's gift, she would have labeled her a shameless gold digger and thrown her out of the house immediately. But because the girl had the courage to speak her mind, the old woman agreed to let Shin add those high-level charms to her uniform. Afterwards, Diziem pulled Shin aside and warned him that although his enchantment craft was a masterpiece, leaking it could cause unimaginable disasters. He had to keep this a secret. If the military found out about this, it could start a war. Hearing that, Shin almost rescinded his offer to enchant Prince August's uniform, causing the king to suddenly backpedal. Whoa, hold on, grandson, you just need to be discreet about it. Give my son a set too. If he kicks the bucket, I'll have no heir. And so, everyone got their uniforms upgraded except for Maria, because she didn't want to wear a national secret. This girl is so quirky. People would kill to wear something like this. And just to be safe, from tomorrow on, our boy Shin will escort little Sicily to school. One slip-up and he might lose his future wife. Shin also introduced everyone to his magic gate. Step through it, and you'll instantly teleport to where you want to go. This is so much like Doraemon's Anywhere Door. Episode 3. From today, Shin started the routine of taking Sicily to school every day. The young man was already addicted to the feeling of being her escorting knight, yet he acted all calm and cool as if it were nothing. Maria, walking behind, watched her two friends, their faces as red as a gack fruit, stammering and stuttering, wanting to speak but not daring to. It's so frustrating it makes my eyes bleed. I'd rather just date one of them myself and get it over with. As soon as he got to class, Shin was immediately spotted by August, who didn't hesitate to tease him. Oh, the sage's grandson has only been in school for 1 day, and he's already bringing a girl along. Aren't you lucky? It made Shin want to dig a hole and hide in it right there. He was already embarrassed, and then his best friend had to poke fun at him a few more times. Life really spares no one. He had just entered the classroom and hadn't even caught his breath when Shin had to face August's 2 stone-faced bodyguards. As he was wondering how to handle the situation, suddenly, with a swoosh, his classmate, Alice, shot into the classroom like an arrow, sliding a long way across a desk. As soon as she entered, she excitedly said, "I was just so excited last night that I stayed up late," Alice stammered, while Maria and Sicily could only shake their heads in exasperation. Seeing his peers acting like such immature punks, Shin could only console himself. Well, 15 is considered an adult in this world. Better to be immature than a total menace. The morning started with homeroom. Then the teacher led the whole class on a tour around the school. The Top Magic Academy truly lived up to its name. The campus was divided into 2 main sections, one side for classrooms, and the other for teachers' offices and various laboratories. When he heard the introduction about the research groups, Shin burst out laughing when he heard the name Body Language, a research group for muscle-enhancing magic. A magic school that teaches bodybuilding? So weird. But for some reason, August's bodyguard's eyes lit up with excitement. He almost joined immediately if not for his duty to protect the prince. Alice suddenly asked Shin which group he planned to join. Who knew he'd cheekily reply that after school, he'd rather go home and sleep. What his grandparents taught him was enough, but coming out of August's mouth, it turned into, "No group is worthy of me. I'll start my own epic research group," making the whole class ooh with excitement. Before Shin could object, Alice had already signed up first, pulling the whole gang in with her. Even the teacher volunteered to be the advisor. "Just do it. I'll back you up," Sicily whispered. "If you start a group, I'll join." Maria even shipped them hard, making Shin's face turn as red as a boiled shrimp. And so, the Ultimate Magic Research Society was born, with the reluctant president being Shin, who just wanted to dig a hole and bury himself out of embarrassment. Meanwhile, at the royal palace, Diziem and his ministers were having a headache over the sudden increase in the number of magic beasts. Minister Dominic suspected human involvement. The king immediately ordered an investigation. Meanwhile, at the Ritzburg residence, this guy was being chewed out by his father, called a complete idiot. Being called a moron and an idiot made him bitter. Unable to take it, he talked back to his old man. For every one thing his dad said, he'd argue back with 10, claiming he was born as the chosen one. He was the most special person, and no one was allowed to oppose him. His increasingly distorted expression and the brainless words of his troublemaker son left his old man stunned, realizing this child was hopelessly stupid. So his old man punched Kurt, knocking him to the ground, and ordered him to be grounded until he repented. This news quickly reached Shin's group. Shin wondered why Kurt was becoming more and more negative. Thor and the blonde-haired guy, who went to middle school with him, said that back then, Kurt wasn't as negative as he is now. They also didn't know why he had become like this. Back then, Kurt was a very self-confident guy, but at most, he was just an average student. Thor astutely noticed that ever since he joined Mr. Strom's research group, he started to change. According to August, in their 8th grade year, Strom came from some strange place to their school and took on the role of a magic teacher. For those with talent, he would try to persuade them to join his lab. He seemed suspicious, so August and the other two refused at the time. Thor added that it was because the guy often wore dark glasses that covered his eyes, but acted as if he could see everything clearly, and could even sense inanimate objects, so they were very wary of him. The old man tried to save his troublemaker son, this menace, but he forgot that his wife was not only a menace herself but also an idiot. She invited Mr. Strom to their home, begging him to help her son return to normal. A mother who doesn't even realize her own son has been acting strange, for who knows how long. Such a loving mother. He was polite when talking to Kurt's mom, but when he met Kurt, he continued to hypnotize him, telling him he was special and enchanting him with some kind of magic. He left with a creepy smile that just screamed trouble. At this time, Shin's group was still casually enjoying lunch at the academy since Kurt was grounded at home, so there was no more danger to Sicily. August wondered if Shin still needed to go to her house to pick her up for school. As soon as he finished speaking, Sicily's mood sank, and she gave a faint smile. So, it's over. My walk to school will be without you now. One second she was moping. The next, she heard Shin say that they were on the same route anyway, so even if he wasn't protecting Sicily, they could still walk together. How did you get so good at flirting when you lived in a forest, kid? Did you update your skills from birth? Sicily was so happy she jumped to her feet. Realizing she had overreacted, she shyly sat back down. Plus, with August teasing them, both Shin and Sicily turned as red as boiled shrimp. Seeing that Sicily might explode if he continued teasing, August held back and concluded that, anyway, Sicily and Maria are beautiful girls. Without Kurt, there would be plenty of other guys wanting to harass them. It's better to have Shin by their side for protection. Shin also found that reasonable. Once someone had malicious intent towards them, his tracking spell would detect it immediately. Shin thought everyone knew about it, but it turned out they didn't. They had only heard about it from adults but had never experienced it themselves. To help his friends understand better, Shin used the example of the first time he went to hunt a magic beast at age 10. But not only did you guys not get it, you were frozen stiff, so shocked you almost faded out of existence. There were no words left for this guy who wasn't like a normal person. It took a while for their brains to reboot, to get to the afternoon class. As they were walking, Shin suddenly sensed a killing intent. That idiot Kurt appeared out of nowhere, shooting a powerful stream of fire magic toward them. If it weren't for Shin's quick reaction, the show would have ended at episode 3. But this time, his power was incredibly strong. Even Shin's shield couldn't completely block the heat of the attack, and his hand was nearly roasted. In the most critical moment, Shin didn't forget to remind August and Sicily to quickly channel magic into their uniforms. The protective skill would activate automatically. Luckily, Shin's uniform also had a healing function, so the burn would recover very quickly. Shin realized that Kurt had been trying to kill all of them, but failed. This made him go from bitter to even more bitter. He twisted around for a bit like a zombie, and then transformed into a demonoid, his entire body covered by a thick layer of malice. At this point, he had completely lost his consciousness. For safety, and to have fewer hindrances, Shin asked all the students to leave the area. If they stayed, he wouldn't be able to use his full power. Although they didn't want to, there is always only one truth. So, August and the others had to bite the bullet and run ahead to call the teachers. Only then did the fiery battle truly begin. No matter how much stronger Kurt got, if he didn't know how to use it, he was still weak. He took several of Shin's attacks head-on, but still charged forward like a meathead. Shin suddenly realized he hadn't fully transformed into a demonoid 100%, because according to what his grandpa said, demonoids can't speak. But Kurt could still curse Shin to die and scream when in pain, while still trying to figure out a way to turn him back to normal. This idiot saw that he couldn't win. Kurt resorted to a suicide attack. He gathered his power, intending to blow the whole school to smithereens. With no time to think, Shin had no choice but to draw his sword and slash, separating his head from his neck. The technique stopped along with it, saving the entire school. But Shin couldn't be happy, because this was the first time he had killed someone. Kurt had become a demonoid, but he could still have been saved. Yet, he could only end him this way. Everything was already over, but no teachers had arrived yet. Only August's group rushed back, worried about Shin. It turned out that during the battle just now, they had witnessed everything. Shin single-handedly defeated a demonoid. Episode 4, being suddenly hailed as a hero by everyone, made Shin feel a bit pressured and tired. Seeing this, August approached to check on his best friend, because he was also worried about the recent demonoid incident. Shin was lost in thought. After thinking for a moment, he told his friends his suspicion. Could turning into a demonoid be that easy? In the past, a high-level mage failed to cast a supreme magic spell and turned into a demonoid. But Kurt had just enrolled in the Magic Academy, and his magic was pathetically weak. So if he lost control, at most, he would just run around like a chimpanzee, not possibly transform into a demonoid like that. In the past, Merlin told Shin that when someone becomes a demonoid, they completely lose all reason and can only scream. However, at that time, Kurt could still talk nonsense, and during the fight, Shin even felt he was a bit weak. At this point, the whole group looked at Shin with pity. You heard that right, kids. A demonoid to our boy Shin is just small fry. Besides, this was like a demonoid ordered off wish. To sum it all up, after connecting the dots, Shin figured that Kurt had been used by bad guys for human experiments. When the group returned home, they saw Diziem had arrived. He had received information that Shin had eliminated the demonoid, helping to protect the nation's safety. So he decided to award Shin a first-class medal. Shin was shocked because he never expected to receive a medal so easily. It was just a bit psychologically scarring since it was the first time he'd killed someone. The king, however, didn't think it was a simple matter. In the past, the first time a demonoid appeared, it nearly brought the kingdom to the brink of annihilation. Recently, it had appeared once again, causing a lot of anxiety among the people. Fortunately, Shin defeated it immediately, so there were no casualties. Therefore, Diziem believed Shin's achievement was of great significance to the nation, and was comparable to that of the sage and the wise man. which is why he was awarded such a top-notch medal. With the mentality of grandparents who always worry about their grandchild getting into danger, Merlin and Melinda didn't want Shin to get involved in national politics. However, Diziem also didn't want to lose this national treasure, so he promised the two of them that he would do his utmost to protect Shin from those who would want to exploit his power for the safety of all the people in the country. The sage had to agree to the king's proposal, but he added one more condition. If Diziem couldn't protect Shin safely, their family would immediately pack up and get the hell out of this kingdom. Since being awarded the first-class medal by the king, Shin became like a youth idol, with a fan base as large as the sages and the wise man's. Wherever he went, the girls would flock to him. Shin thought Diziem had said yesterday not to let this matter be revealed. So why does everyone know about it today? With this level of keyword catching, it's not an exaggeration to say he's bad at literature. He only said not to reveal the details of the incident. The fact that a demonoid appeared in this country again and was immediately defeated, who wouldn't know about that? Seeing Shin walking between Maria and Sicily, the girls were very curious about the identity of these two beautiful young ladies. One girl even guessed that one of the two was Shin's sweetheart or fiancé. You guessed it perfectly, girl. Remember to ask the director for a raise today. Hearing what the girl said, Sicily was so embarrassed her face turned as red as a tomato. Whoa, there, girl, can't we keep our composure for a second? They haven't even said whether it was the blue-haired girl or the red-haired girl. What if they were complimenting Maria? But it's okay. As long as Shin has little Sicily in his heart, it's fine. Shin felt bad for getting her involved in this mess. After this incident, many girls at school wanted Shin to join their magic research groups. The head teacher had a huge headache over this, so he came up with a condition to filter out quality students. They must know how to use storage magic in another dimension. After the interview round, Teacher Marcus selected two promising candidates. Mark Bean, whose family owns the famous Bean Forge, known for making weapons that are both beautiful and sharp. Accompanying Mark was a beautiful girl named Olivia Stone, Bean's childhood friend. Her family owns a restaurant called the Stone Pot, which is famously hard to get a table at. Now, with Olivia here, the whole group can feast on delicious food that's to die for. Seeing that Mark came from a family of blacksmiths, Shin asked if he knew how to make weapons to replace his old sword. Mark said he only knew how to forge a small knife, and was very hesitant, thinking the sword Shin used to defeat the demonoid was top-notch. But Shin said the weapon he used that day was just a normal sword. A true genius. Every sentence he breathes is a flex. It was just a normal sword. But Shin had enchanted it to create a shockwave layer around the blade, which could help him cut through anything without using force. Sounds like a fruit-slicing game, doesn't it, everyone? Shin prefers to use a thinner type of sword, but that makes it very easy to break, so he asked Mark to make it more high-end for him. Yuri wished to become proficient in using enchantment magic, but seeing how talented everyone in the group was made her feel a little insecure. Shin, seeing this, immediately encouraged her and promised to ask Melinda to help her. Knowing she was about to become the disciple of the kingdom's greatest wise woman made Yuri ecstatic. She sidled up close, showing off her soft, round assets, and grabbed Shin's hand, thanking him profusely, making Sicily, who was standing behind, get super pissed. I've never seen anyone pout so adorably. But this time, Shin is going to be in for it with his wifey when he gets home. According to the initial investigation, the security bureau discovered that on the day Kurt turned into a demonoid, a middle school teacher had visited him. So they sent two investigators to Strom's place to investigate and clarify the case. Strom's eyes were covered by a pair of pitch-black glasses, but they could still move very rhythmically like a normal person's, so they thought he was using some kind of magic to replace his eyesight. Strom's eyes became like that because a family member tried to kill him to fight for the inheritance. Afterward, he fled to this kingdom in exile. The investigator hinted that recently, Strom had been putting in a lot of effort to invite students to join his research group, so he felt this incident was quite regrettable. They knew he was a very high-level mage, so they wanted to invite him to conduct an autopsy on Kurt's demonized corpse. Strom's ego was stroked by the praise, so he happily agreed to go with them. During the lunch break, Shin's research group gathered at the academy's cafeteria. Shin wanted to make a thin sword, but that would make it very easy to break. If he kept buying new ones, Shin would go broke because Melinda wanted him to learn the value of money, so she told Merlin not to give him any. While wondering what to do, Tony had an idea. Just by replacing the blade and reusing the hilt, he could save quite a bit of money. So the group sealed the deal. On the way home, they would stop by Mark's family forge to check it out. But Maria wasn't very interested in weapons, so she invited the girls to Olivia's family restaurant. You must be really hungry, huh? At that moment, over at Strom's, he had arrived at the security force's training ground. He even played dumb, asking why an autopsy was taking place in such a location. Kurt's body was nowhere to be seen, only a squad of soldiers surrounding him from all sides. It turned out it was all an act to test Strom. He had carelessly made a serious mistake because the king had issued a gag order to keep the details of the incident secret, and not to disclose the identity of the person who turned into a demonoid to protect their family from discrimination. Yet Strom knew it was Kurt. Therefore, it could be confirmed that he was the one pulling the strings. Strom didn't hesitate to confess that it was one of his human experiments. On the way to Mark's house, the group was chatting happily when suddenly there was an explosion nearby, blowing a hole in the wall. Shin realized Strom was the one who caused it. He had knocked out the investigator from before. With the last of his strength, he warned the Crown Prince that he was the culprit behind the demonoid incident and advised August to leave quickly. If you kick the bucket, Mr. Decium will cry a river. Shin immediately drew his sword and attacked him continuously. However, this guy was a high-level mage, who also used stimulants to boost his power, making him a tough nut to crack. Knowing Shin couldn't use levitation magic, Strom flew up and taunted him. "You're the grandson of the great sage, but your skills are this pathetic? My bad, I can still fly in an instant and punch your lights out." Strom's pitch-black glasses were shattered by Shin's attack, revealing his bloodshot, addict-like eyes. Shin immediately realized he was a demonoid. But how the hell did he still retain his sanity? While Strom was blabbering about his plan to destroy humanity, Shin took the opportunity to focus the sun's rays into a single point to use his power and deliver a fatal blow to him. The temperature from Shin's strike was so high it turned the ground to glass. Strom's body was nowhere to be found, but it's unlikely he survived this ordeal. By the time the commander of the magic division and the captain of the Knight's Order arrived, Shin had already taken care of it. "We heard the news and rushed right over." "Seriously? The fight's over and you two just show up to collect the body?" "Well, old age and weak bodies, so you can't really blame them." Episode 5. Maria had just finished getting things off her chest and stepped outside when she ran into her idol, the wise woman, Melinda, who was sneakily watching Shin and Sicily talk. She even pulled Maria over to watch with her. This grandmother was very worried about her clueless grandson's love life, so she asked Maria what she thought of those two. Would they end up together or not? Of all the people to ask, she asks the one who suffers the most from their PDA. Maria thought that anyone could see they had feelings for each other, but it seemed Sicily wasn't aware that she had fallen for Shin. Because even though many people had confessed to her before, Sicily had always rejected them. In other words, Shin was her first love. This morning, the group had plans to go to the Bean Forge to craft a weapon for Shin. On the way, August saw his friend's face was as long as if he were constipated, and asked, "Are you that sad?" It turned out Shin was speculating that Strom might still be alive. According to Shin, at the training ground, the traces left by his magic in the past only created black pits, that's all. There were never any explosions like this time. Shin thought that the explosion was probably just a smokescreen to deceive them. After hearing this, August knew the trouble wasn't over and that things weren't that simple, so he told Shin to just take whatever he wants, his dad will cover it. His family's loaded, they've got buckets and piles of cash. August also asserted that right now, only Shin could go toe-to-toe with Strom. If he died, they would all die too, so he should feel free to equip himself with the best gear. Upon arriving at the forge, Mark and Olivia were already outside to greet them. When it comes to his own business, he's a bit dense, but when it comes to others' business, he's super nosy. Shin immediately noticed. Why is Olivia at Mark's house so early in the morning? Just hearing that, they knew there was gossip to be had, so Sicily and Maria chuckled and pulled Olivia aside to chat. While he was focused on his work, his son kept calling him, so Mark's father angrily yelled at him. But when he saw his son had brought the Crown Prince, aka their personal cash cow, the old man was completely shocked. Breaking out in a sweat, he immediately knelt down and bowed. He almost lost his head for disrespecting royalty. Still, reeling from the shock, then came the sage's grandson, aka the new hero who had just defeated a demonoid. Mark's dad nearly had a heart attack twice today. At August's request, the old man guaranteed he would forge Shin the finest and most satisfactory weapon. After finishing their discussion about the weapon, Shin suddenly asked if Mark's family sold anything other than weapons, while the family's sign was looming right in front of them. Old man Mark mentioned jewelry, which gave Shin the idea to put a protective enchantment on it, so he asked Sicily if she liked any particular piece of jewelry. But she misunderstood and thought Shin wanted to give her jewelry like a ring, so she became shy and hesitant, not daring to speak her mind. Who knew they were talking about two completely different things? After just 2 sentences, Shin blurted out his idea, causing Sicily to fall from a state of hope to the brink of despair. The outsiders couldn't stand this guy's cluelessness anymore, so they glared at him and gave him an earful to wake him up. To make up for it, Shin decided to give her any piece of jewelry that Sicily liked, but there were too many. It was dazzling. Besides, since it was a gift from Shin, Sicily wanted him to choose. Shin chose a ring with a simple design. The moment he personally put the ring on Sicily's finger, the happiness felt like they were about to get married. The whole atmosphere turned pink. It's crazy. Only 15 and already thinking so far ahead, you kids. Finally, the day of the medal ceremony arrived. Walking for the first time amidst thunderous applause and such a solemn atmosphere made Shin feel overwhelmed. The ceremony went by very quickly. Unexpectedly, the king really kept his promise when he announced to everyone that no one would be allowed to drag Shin into political or military matters, ensuring he could live a peaceful life forever. In that moment, Shin suddenly felt that this old man was actually pretty cool. The next morning, as soon as he opened the door, there were dozens of fans blocking the gate. Seeing Shin appear, they frantically rushed toward him, scaring the crap out of him. The 3 of them had to use a teleportation gate to get to school. Just as they stepped out of the gate, Shin almost smashed his face into Yuri's chest. The other students were very surprised to see the 3 of them suddenly appear. Shin had to explain what happened with his gate being surrounded this morning. but Rin was only focused on the magic that Shin used to create the gate. He had to explain that it was a type of magic used to shorten the distance between two connected points, unlike teleportation magic. Even though he explained it very concisely, Rin still didn't understand a thing. Shin had to console her, saying that even the sage didn't understand it, so it was okay if she couldn't figure it out. He would teach everyone this magic eventually, so there was no need to worry. Thinking about improving everyone's abilities made Shin feel incredibly excited, and he let out a strange smile, which gave August goosebumps. Recently, countless unusual things had happened, so to ensure their safety and prepare for the next time, Shin wanted to improve everyone's defensive and offensive capabilities. First up was testing the level of each person's magic control. The more Shin talked, the more he realized their understanding of magic control was almost non-existent, so he had to teach them from scratch. Practice is the fastest way to learn, so Shin asked Maria to try casting a magic shield and pointed out that their shields were all very weak, unable to withstand even one of his basic attacks. Then it was Sicily's turn to try casting her own shield and activating the defensive enchantment on her ring. As expected, thanks to the top-tier enchantment Shin carved into the ring, he then gave another example from his own battle with Strum. The shield he used when facing Shin was what you'd call top-tier. Finally, he flexed his own magic control ability. The moment Shin released his magic, the atmosphere seemed to freeze and come to a standstill. He had to stop in time, otherwise, they wouldn't be able to bear it. Witnessing his super top-tier magic control skill, they immediately realized how incredible this skill was. So after school, the whole group went over to Shin's house to hang out. Merlin found out that Shin had started teaching his friends the magic knowledge he knew and was very happy. That way, it means from now on, they are the disciples of the sage's grandson. Just hearing it sounds impressive. Taking the opportunity, Merlin couldn't help but flex about his genius grandson, praising him up and down. He has a very special way of thinking, which is to care about the process, not the result. The next second, he cast the spatial gate magic that Shin had created, as a way of affirming that even though Shin is a genius, he's not different from others. As long as they try hard, they can achieve the same things as him. He did this so that people wouldn't overestimate or worship him, so Shin would no longer feel lonely. Melinda noticed this intention with just a glance. The next morning, when she came to class, Rin walked in with a bandaged and singed face. It turned out she was practicing magic at home and failed, causing it to go boom, which made Shin feel helpless and call her a rebellious magical girl. Who knew Rin would also like that name, and made everyone call her that? Shin's weapon was finally completed. As expected, it was very special. Press a button and the blade shoots right out. This time, Shin bought jewelry to enchant as gifts for everyone. While everyone was happily receiving their gifts, August came and wanted to ask Shin's permission to use the sword for military purposes. It's purely a weapon for combat. It doesn't use magic. He didn't refuse. But the idea was Tony's, so August still had to ask for his opinion before it was okay. August also revealed that war was very close to them. The Blue Sphere Empire had assembled a large military force that could attack at any moment. If a war broke out, they would have to join the reserve forces. But August immediately promised not to force Shin to join the army. If he wanted to join, he could. If not, that's fine. But as expected of a man, he declared that if there was a war, he would participate because his friends here were all very precious to him. Meanwhile, in the Blue Sphere Empire, a spy had revealed to the king the situation with the increasing number of demon beasts in the main character's kingdom. The time was ripe for action. Episode 6, the Emperor of the Bluvia Kingdom, was furious to learn that he had been painfully tricked by Z. The kingdom's army was stretched thin, fighting an increasing number of demon beasts. Therefore, they didn't have enough forces to defend against the ambush from the neighboring country at the border region. Amidst the chaotic situation, a soldier rushed in hastily to report that the demon beasts were growing in number and were now rampaging to the point of causing chaos in the capital. Understanding that if the capital fell, the country would be like a snake without a head, the emperor immediately ordered all troops at the border to retreat immediately to return to eliminate the demon beasts and protect the country's center of power. News of the Bluvian army's retreat quickly reached the ears of the Magic Division commander and the Knights Order captain of the neighboring country. Both immediately assessed this as a golden opportunity to pursue and annihilate the Bluvian army. At the same time, the Bluvian emperor grew even angrier. He ordered all his subordinates to clear out the demon beasts within that day, or else they wouldn't get paid this month. Upon returning to his private chamber, the emperor discovered Strom casually sitting with his legs crossed on the throne. His eyes looked at him provocatively. Strom had secretly planned this from the beginning, wanting to see him to personally finish off the emperor to seize the throne. He gave him no chance to say any last words and immediately sealed his entire body, rendering him unable to move. Then, with a terrifying attack, he turned him into dust, returning him to Mother Earth in an instant. 3 days later, the Magic Division commander and the Knights Order captain arrived at the Bluvian capital. They were observing the situation to assess the extent of the destruction caused by the demon beasts, when suddenly a familiar voice was heard. It was none other than Strum. He stepped forward and admitted that he was the one behind the war between the two nations, the one who had manipulated everything. He used the kingdom as a tool to wear down the Empire's forces and personally created the conditions for the demon beasts to flood in, aiming to cause damage to both sides. This time, Strom even turned a large number of Bluvia's citizens into demonoids. Faced with this situation, the two commanders decided to retreat immediately to report the urgent situation to Diziem in order to find a countermeasure before things spun out of control. They understood that they couldn't let Strom continue to run rampant like this. After this event, the magic schools were tasked with enhancing the students' combat abilities to prepare them in case the country faced danger again. The Magic Academy decided to collaborate with the Knight Academy to organize a joint training program. When the information was released, many female students appeared both nervous and excited because these two academies were traditionally mortal enemies. Magic Academy students usually focus only on magic and do little physical training, so they are often called beanpoles. Meanwhile, the Knight Academy, which mainly focuses on physical training, often teases the Magic Academy students for being frail and lacking vitality. However, the Magic Academy students are no pushovers, retorting that the Knight Academy is full of simple-minded muscleheads. Even Tony and Julius, despite their knightly origins, had to admit that these back-and-forth teases were quite frustrating. Shin noticed that the atmosphere between the two sides was becoming tense, so he gently reminded them that everyone has strengths and weaknesses in life. The important thing is to complement each other. Everyone agreed because Shin was one of the rare few who could skillfully use both a sword and magic in combat. Sicily was very curious about who had trained such an all-powerful knight. Shin replied that it was Michel, an extremely strict trainer. The whole group's eyes widened in amazement. It turned out, Michel was the predecessor of the Knight's Order Captain, a legendary figure known as the Sword Saint. Although not Shin's biological grandfather, it was clear he was raised in an ideal environment, with teachings from the Sage, the Wise Woman, and the Sword Saint. Surprisingly, Shin had no idea that his master had such a nickname. Noticing the conversation was getting off track, Shin reiterated that the important thing now was to focus on the training objective. Understanding the meaning of the training session was enough, but the female students wouldn't let it go so easily, especially since they tended to hold grudges. This training was organized in a team format. 4 students from the Magic Academy would be paired with 4 students from the Knight Academy to form a group of 8 to eliminate demon beasts in the forest. This format helped both to increase practical combat ability and to control the growing number of demon beasts. Shin was paired with Claude, the top student of the Knight Academy's first year, the runner-up Miranda, along with Neon and Ken. At first glance, the Knight group seemed a bit arrogant, but they all had striking appearances. Shin smiled warmly and asked if any of them had ever fought a demon beast before. The Knight group misunderstood, thinking Shin was bragging about his feat of defeating a demonoid. They told Shin's group not to get in their way because they would eliminate the demon beasts themselves without any support. When August witnessed the situation, he challenged the Knight group to try fighting on their own without a mage's help and see how it goes. Since all the members of the group were highly skilled, the school decided to send them deep into the forest for training. This was a dangerous area, but the chance of encountering strong demon beasts was also higher. Today's supervisors were Sig and Chris, 2 people famous for disliking each other. Shin prayed to God that they wouldn't argue at this moment. Sure enough, as soon as they met, they looked at each other with annoyed expressions. Luckily, both had many fans surrounding them, so they were separated in time. Otherwise, a war would have probably broken out. Shin was used to Sig having many admirers, but he was quite surprised to see that Chris also had a large fan base. During the training, Sig still took the opportunity to flirt, making Maria blush with embarrassment. Miranda, who also had a crush on Sig, could only bite her handkerchief and cry silently because she couldn't do anything. Shin used tracking magic and detected a demon beast approaching. The Knight Academy students immediately drew their swords in tension. When they saw it was just a wild boar, Shin felt it was a waste because if it weren't a demon beast, he could have cooked it for a meal. The Knight group tried to attack but missed every shot and got knocked over. Shin, with his masterful skill, ended the demon beast with just a single sword stroke, leaving everyone wide-eyed in amazement. Sicily used healing magic to help the Knight group recover. The male students over there were mesmerized by her fair chest, making Shin feel openly jealous. Miranda was also annoyed because she had lost face twice today in front of Sicily and Sig. He sensed a herd of demon beasts heading towards them, estimated to be over 100. Among them was one with a very strong reaction. The Knight students began to panic and considered retreating. Meanwhile, Shin didn't hesitate to volunteer to face them. It had been a while since he used explosion-type magic, so this time he was determined to go big. He used hydrogen combined with oxygen to create a powerful reaction, a technique so complex that those who heard it could only shake their heads. The dangerous demon beast that Sig mentioned turned out to be a tiger, a disaster-class demon beast, which was chasing the others, causing the whole pack to gather into a herd. Shin's attack was so powerful it flattened the entire forest. Because the trees were blocking the view, everyone thought it was getting dark, but after that attack, light flooded the area. Miranda had to admit that her academy's level was still far behind. She also apologized to Sicily for causing trouble with her boyfriend. However, upon hearing the word boyfriend, both Shin and Sicily blushed and immediately denied it, even though everyone could clearly see they were happy. You're obviously happy as hell but still pretending to be shy. Episode 7. After walking a bit further, Shin's group encountered another huge bear demon beast. This time, the group coordinated very well and quickly finished off the monster. Miranda was the one who finished it off with her sword. The mages were fine, but the knights got a little scratched up. Sicily proactively offered to heal them, Sieg had nothing but praise for Shin's group of mages. Not to mention his abilities, the others alone were already incredibly skilled. It was clear that before, they were just amateurs. But now they were proficient, and their skills were no less than the best mages in the Magic Academy, like him. So Sieg wanted to ask what secret training method they used to improve. Shin was very honest and told him that at school, they had formed a new magic research group, and everyone in the group was taught by Shin the training methods that Merlin used to teach him. Sieg felt that wasn't enough, so he pressed further. Shin then remembered that he also taught them how he imagined things when using magic. This was the key point, so Sieg immediately latched onto it and asked if Shin could teach him what that research group does. Shin was very willing, but August stopped him. He reminded him that Sieg was a soldier. If he learned Shin's magic, it would mean using his magic for military purposes. If they were careless, it could lead to diplomatic problems. The current situation between the two countries was very tense. If this power fell into the hands of the neighboring country, they wouldn't even need demonoids. Humans would destroy the world with their own hands first. Shin didn't quite understand. It was just teaching Sieg a little magic. How could it be that serious? August sighed, frowned, and scolded Shin. You still don't realize your own power and influence, do you? Whether you cause a war or not, we can't be sure yet. August had also warned the members of the research group not to let this power leak out to other countries. It's fine if they say they're monopolizing the power. Finally, Shin understood. He was not to spread his terrifying power anymore, but Sieg was still insistent on knowing the training method that helped their research group improve so quickly. August had to reveal a little to him, saying that they just practiced magic control twice every day, and every day, increase the amount of magic power you control by a little. It's that simple, and it was too simple for Sieg, so he didn't believe it himself. August was sure of it, so he called Sicily and Maria over. He asked them to cast a magic shield for him to see. The shield was so thick that even Sieg exclaimed in amazement. Maria even chuckled that they had only trained to this level and were still far behind Shin's shield. At this point, even if Sieg didn't want to believe it, he had to. Maria humbly said that their technique was still very poor, but then Sieg flirted with her, making her blush and fall head over heels. The training session ended there, and it was time to return to the meeting point. While Shin's group had a smooth and harmonious training session, the other groups were not at peace at all. Tony's group was paired with an old friend of his from middle school, but the guy always looked at him with resentment and hatred. At the slightest provocation, he'd call Tony a coward who ran away to the Magic Academy, leaving him helpless. Suddenly, a demonic beast appeared. That idiot and the other knights ignored the teacher's words and charged forward, declaring that only swords had the right to speak. As a result, they were bitten by the demonic beast without fail, struggling but unable to take down a single one, forcing Tony's group to use magic to destroy the demonic beast and save those idiots. Even though they were saved by Tony, those guys weren't grateful at all and maintained their resentful attitude, which annoyed Mark. Tony, however, acted as if nothing happened, and explained that it was probably because the girl he liked in middle school confessed to and dated Tony, but they broke up very quickly after that, having only gotten as far as kissing. So it turns out the deep-seated reason for this brotherly strife was a girl. Just hearing it makes you feel bad for the guy. Meanwhile, in Alice's group, they were teased by the knights the whole way for being girls. When a demonic beast appeared, the guys, wanting to show off for the girls, charged forward but couldn't take down a single one. Furious from being looked down on, Alice and Yugi wanted to use magic to defeat them, but Rin was faster and zapped them all with lightning, making everyone's hair frizzy like cotton candy when they returned. The whole group gathered. Shin found it strange and asked, "What the heck happened to you guys?" But they just giggled and explained it in a single, short sentence that made no sense to Shin. But when they asked him back about his training session, Maria revealed that Shin and Sicily were being lovey-dovey all day, making him and Sicily so embarrassed they tried to defend themselves. But with August joining in on the teasing, they could only be embarrassed to death. Just kidding. But August also seriously recounted that thanks to Shin holding back and providing support from the rear, they had a very successful training session. Suddenly, he felt a sense of responsibility for getting his friends involved in a national secret. The more he thought about it, the sadder his face became. Maria had to explain to everyone why the boy suddenly got depressed. August also took the opportunity to remind them and affirmed that after graduation, their group would surely become high-level administrators of the country, with the possibility of being a special team directly commanded by August. But because of that, they would be monitored by other countries. Shin felt really guilty for having changed their lives, so he spoke up and apologized. But it wasn't as he thought. Everyone was happy to become stronger and have a stable life in the future. Plus, they get to be part of the state apparatus. What could be better? They should be the ones thanking him. This surprised Shin greatly, and he quickly regained his good mood. August then reminded him that no matter how much he supported him, there had to be a limit. Shin shouldn't pull any crazy stunts, because no one would be able to save him then. The next morning, the whole group went to an open field, where Shin used to practice, so they could unleash their full power without being discovered by anyone else. While they were training their heads off, August suddenly called everyone over for something important. This was a national secret. It's not to be told to ordinary people, but sooner or later, everyone here will be people of high rank and authority. If they have to face demonoids, they will become an important resource. A recent report stated that the Blue Sphere's empire has been raised by demonoids. The damage to the people and villages can only be described with one word: tragic. The nobles were hunted down and exterminated without exception. The common people were almost completely wiped out. Because the enemy are demonoids, neighboring countries couldn't help. Worse yet, after each attack, the demonoid forces increase. Somehow, they were turned into demonoids. Just one demonoid was enough to turn a country upside down, and now there are so many. So, Shin decided to set up a training camp this summer to improve everyone's power, but he didn't know where to hold it yet. August suggested they go to whoever's territory was suitable. Maria suggested they go to Sicily's territory, because there's a hot spring there that's amazing to soak in. Needless to say, everyone agreed. Shin told his grandparents about this and got their approval, but when Melinda asked who the guardian would be, Shin was clueless. Why would they need a guardian? He was immediately scolded by Melinda. A group of boys and girls of the same age sleeping in the same house, without any supervision? Are you kids going to run wild or something? Plus, her grandson causes trouble at the drop of a hat. Just talking about it was unsettling, so Melinda and Merlin decided to go with them to the training camp. On the way there, Shin discovered that many great and common magical tools were created by his grandmother. This made him very proud, but hearing about her past achievements made Melinda embarrassed. Plus, with Merlin teasing her beside her, she yelled at him to shut up. By late afternoon, the group suddenly realized they were surrounded by a pack of mid-level demonic beasts. Everyone wanted to be the one to take action. To show off their power by killing the beasts, Shin had them draw lots. Rin was the lucky one to draw it. A single lightning strike blew the demonic beasts into a pile. Merlin, inside the carriage, praised them. The kids these days have improved so much, but Melinda lamented that one Shin was tiring enough, and now there's a whole bunch of little monsters. I wonder what kind of trouble they'll get into in the future. By evening, the group arrived at Sicily's mansion. The first thing they did after arriving was enjoy the bath, the famous hot spring of this place. When people relax, it's easy for them to say what's on their minds. In his heart, Merlin also sincerely thanked Shin's friends for keeping him from being lonely. He had felt very guilty that Shin didn't have any friends his age, so when Shin made such good friends, he was truly happy and thanked them. Not just Merlin, but Melinda on the other side as well. She also thanked everyone for being friends with her troublemaker grandson and decided to help the kids with their training. Episode 8. The next day, the group of students participated in a special training session. This time, they learned directly about how to control magic power, instructed by Merlin, and how to create magic tools, which Melinda was in charge of. Thanks to the long-term experience and dedicated guidance of these two great seniors, the lesson went very smoothly and effectively. Just as Shin expected, being taught by people famous throughout the land, it would be strange if they didn't improve. After observing the training session, Melinda couldn't help but praise them. She said that these kids could cast magic continuously without chanting. Even the Royal Magic Division would have to concede defeat. She even joked that she might have to recruit the kids to help out the Royal Palace soon. Hearing this, Shin not only didn't get complacent, but also felt more pressure. He realized that not only did his friends need to work hard, but he himself also needed to train diligently to not be left behind. Since that day, he had destroyed hundreds of demonic beasts. Hearing this, Shin's friends were completely shocked. Everyone thought they were already very strong, but who knew Shin was so far ahead of them? Someone even shouted for the group to put up a shield, before Shin accidentally takes them out. Shin then began to cast a new magic spell. He focused his magic power and unleashed an explosive blast with terrifying power, leveling the entire mountain range in the distance. In just an instant, the ground shook violently, and dust flew everywhere. And of course, a few more mountains were vaporized. Melinda was both surprised and angry, almost bonking Shin on the head a few times for overdoing it. However, the special thing about this technique was that even though it was extremely powerful, it didn't affect anyone nearby. That was because Shin had directed all the power in a single direction, not letting any energy spread randomly. That evening, August came to see Shin and asked him to open a gate to the royal palace urgently. At first, everyone thought he was going back to meet some pretty girl. That's why he was in such a hurry. But when he arrived, there really was a girl waiting for him. That person was Eli, August's official fiancé. Before he could even rest, August was berated by Eli. She blamed him for going training and leaving her and her sister at home, bored to death. Her sister also took the chance to chime in, blaming August, saying he knew she was a huge fan of Melinda, but still didn't let her come along. So much for brotherly love. August explained that he didn't let the two girls come because he was afraid they'd be in danger, but to see him, his father, was very relaxed about it. He believed that if Merlin and Melinda were there, everyone would surely be safe. As a result, August had to bring these two pains in the neck with him to the training site. Shin secretly thought that Eli would be worried about August being surrounded and flirted with by girls. Who knew the person Eli was actually worried about was him? Because Shin and August were stuck together like glue, it made Eli jealous. After hearing that, Shin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was suddenly made the third wheel in his own story. August's little sister was even worse. Her imagination ran wild, picturing movies about fighting over a best friend. Though her face was innocent, her mind was extremely imaginative. During lunch, August advised Shin that if he had feelings for Sicily, he should confess as soon as possible. August said the girl had already given him such a clear green light, yet Shin was still just standing there. If someone else snatched her away, it would serve him right. Shin was still hesitant because he wasn't sure if Sicily liked him or not. He was afraid she was just being kind and treated him gently for that reason. After hearing this, August just sighed. He said it's true no one can read another's mind, but if you don't say it, how will you ever take the next step? And confessing is the guy's responsibility, so Shin shouldn't avoid it anymore. After that, the group gathered to hang out together. A little girl named May, upon seeing Shin and Sicily standing close together, praised them, saying they looked like a great couple. The innocent remark made both of them blush like ripe tomatoes. Eli and May then went to see Melinda. She lavished praise on her adorable granddaughter, then took the chance to lovingly scold Shin, saying he was a real pain to raise. Everyone laughed along in agreement. Seeing this, Sicily spoke up, saying that if she and Shin had a child, it would surely be very cute, so don't worry. After saying that, her face turned bright red and she ran off. August patted Shin's shoulder and gently reminded him, "The signal is this clear. And you still won't confess? What are you waiting for, you idiot?" That night, Shin found Sicily sitting alone by the lake, watching the moon. He gathered all his courage, approached her, and confessed. Sicily immediately accepted, making Shin feel overjoyed. But as the two were enjoying the moment of romance, a strange noise was heard. It turned out their friends were secretly watching. Merlin and Melinda were there too, making the atmosphere even more lively. Melinda laughed loudly and said she'd had her eye on this granddaughter-in-law for a long time. Only now did her godforsaken grandson finally make a move. However, even if you're in love, don't forget to train and get stronger. The next morning, Shin invited the group to the beach to train. Though he called it training, the group actually started, a game of volleyball combined with magic. The first ball was served high into the sky by the blonde girl. Olivia immediately received the ball and coordinated with Tony, using wind magic to spike it. Then, Olivia used fire magic to power it up, making the ball as hot as a coal, flying straight at Maria. Maria couldn't receive it and was knocked back. The game continued boisterously until the ball flew straight towards Eli and May, who were sunbathing. Luckily, Merlin appeared in time to save them, or the two girls would have been goners. He said, "That's enough playing. Go rest for a bit." That night, the group gathered and chatted. It was late, but murmuring could still be heard from the room. Melinda went to check and saw the room was pitch black with the lights off. It turned out the whole group had gotten under the covers, pretending to be asleep. Shin was hiding with Sicily, but his hand accidentally landed on a soft, milky-scented spot, which startled him. As a result, he was caught red-handed by Melinda. She then dragged them all out of bed to give them a scolding they'd never forget. Episode 9. Just remembering what happened last night made Shin's heart pound, causing him to lose sleep. While he was dazed, walking to the dining room, he ran into his girlfriend, who was also coming from her bedroom. The scene from yesterday reappeared in his mind, making them both blush beet red. As the guy, Shin spoke up to break this awkward atmosphere in an even more awkward way by asking Sicily to go to the dining hall with him, or the food would get cold. "Is there another way to the dining hall, dude?" Although she was also very embarrassed, Sicily wanted to ask Shin for a very urgent favor. It had to be done before her parents left on a business trip. That favor was none other than to inform Sicily's parents that the two of them were dating. It had been less than 24 hours since they became a couple, and the two kids were already meeting the parents. At this speed, not even a playboy could keep up with them. While Sicily was still quite shy, Shin was very happy about officially meeting his parents-in-law. He reassured her that reporting to her parents was a good and beneficial thing for the two of them later. He talked big, but when facing his future parents-in-law, Shin felt tense and pressured, constantly swallowing. Sicily's old man saw the two of them arriving so early and figured it must be something very important, so he urged Shin to speak up. Gathering all his courage, Shin managed to say the full sentence. "May I have your permission to date your daughter?" Then he waited for his in-laws' reaction. They were surprised for a moment, but a second later, the old man jumped up happily, grabbed Shin's hand, and thanked him profusely. "Thank you for choosing our daughter," which shocked the boy so much he turned pale. While the old man was still rambling on about how today was such a happy and lucky day, Sicily's mother became serious. Just a gentle reminder made her husband obey her completely. Before agreeing to let them date, she had something to ask Shin to be sure. Their family is of the noble class, so Sicily wouldn't date someone without a marriage promise. In other words, she meant they had to get engaged for her to feel at ease in trusting her daughter to Shin. And so, in 24 hours, from friends to lovers to fiancé, the progress was faster than the speed of light. This kind of thing only happens in movies. Don't try this at home, bros. After seeing Shin accept her proposal and seeing how serious he was about her daughter, Sicily's mother also agreed to let them be together and congratulated her on achieving her dream of getting a man after all these years. Their training session today also had Eli and May observing. Seeing the others fight and use magic so coolly, Eli was full of admiration. But when Merlin offered to let the girls try learning magic, Eli shyly refused, knowing she had no talent for magic. Only May was excited to participate. Merlin decided to guide the little girl from the very basics. Unexpectedly, May actually had a talent for magic. To have so much magic power at such a young age, Even Melinda couldn't help but praise her, which made the little girl very pleased. Alice didn't expect that even Princess May had the talent to become a powerful mage like her brother. That sparked Rin's competitive spirit, but she tried too hard, and it backfired with a boom. Melinda, beside them, clutched her stomach laughing to tears and teased the two of them, saying not to let May surpass them in many aspects. Realizing she was teasing them about their chests being smaller than a child's, they directed a scary glare at May. The terrified girl hid behind Shin, only to be met with her brother's mock anger. Your real brother is standing right here, and you're not hiding behind me? What's the meaning of hiding behind someone else? Looks like I'll have to add another punishment. This made the already scared girl even more frightened. A while later, Shin said he wanted to practice a new magic spell. Everyone immediately ran far away from him and hid behind a shield. Shin swore he wasn't testing an attack spell. Only then did people tentatively believe him and come closer, but they were still very worried. But Shin really wasn't testing an attack spell. He just needed a rock and chanted a spell to make the rock float into the air. To everyone's astonishment, he called this the levitation spell. After a successful test, Shin immediately applied it to himself. It was his first time flying, so he was extremely excited, soaring back and forth, ignoring the people below, looking up with dumbfounded expressions. This time, he had created something beyond their imagination again, just like everyone else. But May quickly recovered her senses and excitedly wanted Shin to teach her this magic. She wanted to fly like a bird too, but Maria stopped her and reminded her that she was wearing a skirt, and flying would expose her underwear, which made May blush beet red. Engaged in the morning, but it wasn't until evening that Shin and Sicily went to see his grandparents to announce it. Feeling very guilty for not telling them sooner, he bowed his head and apologized profusely. These two kids getting together was just a matter of time, but Melinda was worried about something else. That very night, she went to see Sicily's parents to discuss the matter again. She said frankly that Shin was not their biological grandson. If the parents of Sicily agreed because he was their grandson, they could reconsider the issue now. Sicily's father was silent for a moment, then explained that, although they were a little disappointed, that wasn't the reason he agreed to let his daughter get engaged to Shin. Sicily also said truthfully that she had loved him from the first sight, and at that time, she didn't know he was the grandson of the sage. So she likes Shin for who he is. With the misunderstanding cleared up, the parents on both sides took the opportunity to discuss the engagement date. They said discuss, but the engagement party was to be held the very next day. The next morning, everyone on the team was given a new uniform with an absolute defense enchantment. After a period of training, today they would enter the forest for a real battle with a disaster-class monster. Everyone was terrified, but Shin reassured them that with those uniforms, nothing could touch them, which put everyone at ease. After setting out, they soon sensed the magic power of a disaster-class demonic beast. The first ones to battle were Sicily, Julius, Mark, and Olivia. They were all pure support types, so August was quite worried, but Shin comforted him, saying that their current strength was more than enough to fight one-on-one with a disaster-class beast. And it was true. The demonic beast had only appeared for a few seconds before it was obliterated by the five of them, not even a bone fragment left. The pure support types could fight like that, so there's no way the attack types couldn't. Gaining more confidence, today's training session was perfect. Everyone managed to take down a disaster-class demonic beast on their own. Everyone had improved drastically. Now, all that was left was Shin's performance tonight. Just as he finished fixing his hair, Sicily, beautiful in a white dress, walked in. He couldn't help but keep telling her how cute she was. The engagement ceremony took place, with the blessings of all their friends and family, and witnessed by the king. Episode 10. That morning, the sky was crystal clear. Seeing her big brothers and sisters flying in the air, little May couldn't hide her excitement. Her eyes shone with fascination, as if she had just discovered something magical she had never seen before in her life. May was so well prepared that she even wore a pair of safety shorts underneath, so if she flew, nothing would be exposed. That shouldn't be. The sight made everyone chuckle. The group couldn't hide their bright smiles. They just hoped the little girl wouldn't cause the boys around to get nosebleeds from being too cute. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Strom's faction had completed their initial objective, to destroy all the towns and villages within the Empire's territory. When everything was done, Strom became idle. He didn't know what to do next and seemed to have no interest in anything anymore. He just sat there motionlessly, his eyes lazy and still. However, not everyone in the demonoid faction thought like him. Those he had turned into demonoids began to hatch a new plan, an ambitious plan to expand the war to neighboring countries and unite the entire world under the rule of a demonoid empire. They discussed enthusiastically, proposing all sorts of strategies, but to Strom, all those words just gave him a splitting headache. He didn't want to participate. He was too lazy to even harbor any ambitions, nor did he care about power. To him, empty talk doesn't fill anyone's stomach. It's just a waste of time. Nevertheless, deep in the mind of the one called the Demon Lord, there still existed a dark memory, a part of the past that had been buried by time. Strom was once a righteous leader, devoted to his people. He enacted policies favoring the poor and personally participated in farm work to support the farmers, selling agricultural products to merchants. Life seemed to be getting better when he had a small family and a pregnant wife. But the envy of the noble class within the empire was silently accumulating like gunpowder, waiting for the day to explode. They could not accept the fact that people were flocking to live in Strom's territory. They were afraid that if he were elected king, the entire system of exploitation and corruption they had built for so long would collapse. That's why the nobles plotted, to lure him to the imperial capital to approve a new policy. During his absence, they seized the opportunity to kidnap the village girls and sell them into slavery. Then they spread false rumors that Strom himself was the mastermind. The day he returned was also the day the people, the very people he had devoted himself to protecting, came and burned down his house. His pregnant wife was murdered right before his eyes. In a fit of mass hysteria, the feeling of betrayal pushed Strom into an extreme rage. He unleashed a destructive energy and slaughtered all those complicit in the crime. From that moment on, his hatred for the Empire became ingrained in his very being. He gradually transformed, not only physically, but also spiritually, becoming a demonoid, carrying pain and indignation. While he was being lazy and avoiding all plans for world domination, elsewhere, a person named Lauren was receiving an important mission. He was assigned to infiltrate the breakaway demonoid group with the objective of inciting them to attack the Swedes' kingdom, a nation bordering the Earlseed kingdom. In reality, this was just a baiting tactic, because the real goal was to make Shin appear. Because only with the appearance of demonoids would that young man show himself. The next morning, the atmosphere in the royal palace was more solemn than ever. The coronation and succession ceremony for August was held grandly, attended by many dignitaries and citizens. From that moment on, August officially became the crown prince, shouldering the responsibility of steering the country towards prosperity. However, while the ceremony was proceeding smoothly, a soldier suddenly rushed in. With a panicked face, he announced that a large number of demonoids were entering the territory of the Swedes' kingdom. Two other soldiers immediately held him back, believing that the sacred ceremony should not be interrupted by such bad news. However, August thought differently. He didn't blame the soldier. On the contrary, he thanked him for the timely report. He affirmed that all news related to demonoids must be given absolute priority. He stepped before the people and reassured them not to panic, because the kingdom now had the protection of the grandson of the two legendary great sages. Not only Shin, but beside him were the elite students of the Academy of Magic, who had trained tirelessly for this day. August declared loudly that they would depart immediately to deal with the immediate threat. His words were like a morale booster, and the entire square boiled with confidence. At this moment, the group of students stepped out, their spirits high and their majestic appearance making everyone admire them. Shin, however, was startled. He didn't understand why he was suddenly pushed to the front lines like this. Before he could react, August turned to him and told him to think of a name for the group and say a few words to boost the people's confidence. Shin was flustered but had no choice but to improvise. He gathered all his courage, stepped forward and announced the group's name as Ultimate Magicians, while also pledging that they would fight with all their might to defeat the demonoids and protect the peace for the people. Of course, he came up with the name in English to sound cool, and it was then translated back into the local language, so the people could understand. The oath ended with thunderous applause. The people placed their full trust in the younger generation. The group of students entered the preparation phase for what would not be an easy journey. The upcoming battle would not just be a war between humans and demonoids, but also a turning point that would change the fate of many nations. For these young men and women still in school, this was the moment to prove themselves, to overcome their first major challenge and step into the harsh, real world. Episode 11. Right now, in the Swedes' kingdom, a red flare signaling the approach of demonoids was fired into the sky. The soldiers and mages guarding the city gate became extremely tense. They swore to protect that gate with their lives, because if the city were to fall, the consequences would be catastrophic. Just a few seconds later, over 100 demonoids on horseback charged in like a whirlwind. The captain of the knights immediately ordered the evacuation of the remaining citizens. At the same time, he called for reinforcements. Although he remained calm on the outside, he knew full well that reinforcements couldn't arrive that quickly. The demonoids began using magic to break through the city walls. But thanks to a magic tool containing a shield created by Shin, their siege became much more difficult than expected. Meanwhile, Shin's group was rushing to the Swedes' kingdom by air. If they went by carriage, the journey would take several days. But thanks to flight magic, it only took them a few minutes. On the way, they took advantage of the rare moment of peace to tease each other, especially those who were still single. Maria became the main target of the teasing, making her both annoyed and secretly embarrassed. She resolved to take out all her frustration on the unlucky demonoids. Before long, they saw the territory of Swedes appear below them. By now, the demonoids had broken into the city. Scenes of chaos were everywhere. Panicked citizens fled. The streets were devastated and filled with cries of despair. A mother carrying her daughter tried to run from the demonoids chasing her, but she was exhausted and nearly hopeless. In a moment that seemed hopeless, Shin flew down from the sky and sent a demonoid flying with a kick, leaving its comrade standing there, confused about what had just happened. Thor also appeared, grumbling as he landed that Shin's sudden descent almost gave him a heart attack. The remaining demonoid realized this was a rescue force from another country, but before it could finish its taunt, it was taken down by Shin instantly. On the other side, Thor also finished off another one. Afterwards, Shin quickly told the mother and daughter to run to the relief center. Seeing the devastated scene before him, a feeling of hatred welled up inside Shin for the demonoids. At this time, August, the newly appointed crown prince, was standing high above, fulfilling his duty. He introduced himself, reassured the citizens, and told them to find shelter and stay hidden until the rescue force had eliminated all the demonoids. Maria would be his combat partner in this battle. After dividing the teams, Shin instructed Sicily to go to the aid station to help with healing, while also asking Mark and Olivia to protect her, and to absolutely not get hurt, otherwise he wouldn't be able to rest easy. The three of them had no idea that, on a nearby building, a red-haired demonoid was secretly watching them, its eyes as crazed as a rabid fan looking at their idol. In another direction, Alice and Rin, one using water and the other fire, were also engaged in battle. Because of their petite appearance, they were often called kids. The first time she heard that, Alice managed to restrain herself thanks to Rin dousing her with water, but the second time, she flew into a rage and incinerated the demonkin who dared to say it. Disrespectful. The two girls, with good intentions, wanted to help an injured knight get to an aid station, but he refused, saying he could still walk on his own, so they quickly left to save others. Meanwhile, the leader of the demonkin had killed many mages when he ran right into the duo, August and Maria. Despite having taken a fatal blow, he got back up and acted provocatively. After observing for a moment, he realized August was the crown prince of Earlseed, so he immediately thought he was the leader of the rescue force. If he could kill him, the team would fall apart. August denied it, and had to hold back a laugh when introducing his group's name. Not wanting to waste time, Maria attacked immediately. However, her attack was blocked by the demonoid using the corpse of a dead soldier. He brazenly asked her to be his girlfriend, but Maria flatly refused, saying he wasn't worthy. Rejected by a girl in front of everyone, he angrily charged forward, striking with such force that if it weren't for her protective armor, Maria would have been seriously injured. He then grabbed her arm and threw her hard against a wall, causing it to collapse, but she was completely unharmed. The uniform's self-repairing protective layer had saved her from certain defeat. He began to realize what he was facing wasn't a toy, but he was still overconfident when he used a magic device taken from a dead mage's body, one that contained a shield previously created by Shin. Thinking he had the upper hand, he kept boasting and being smug, but just a few minutes later, he was attacked by both August and Maria, who teamed up for a relentless assault, and was ultimately destroyed by the very weapon he had stolen from the enemy side. It's a basic lesson. Using a weapon your opponent has mastered will only get you killed faster. Meanwhile, Julius and Thor coordinated perfectly. One launched the attack, the other delivered the finishing blow. The two of them took down a whole series of demonoids. They were not only strong but also had extremist ideologies, always using the excuse of being oppressed by humans to take their anger out on the innocent. Facing such enemies, they didn't hesitate to punish them mercilessly. Yuri and Tony also proved to be an excellent fighting duo. One used ice to restrain them while the other swung a sword like the wind, slashing enemies as if they were cutting fruit. A few other demonoids decided to launch a surprise attack on the rescue area, but they were too naive to think that place was unguarded. As a result, they were incinerated by Mark and Olivia before they could even say their last words. Among them all, the most badass was still our main character. He acted alone but could take on an entire army of demonoids. With every step he took forward, another one fell. The red-haired guy who had been secretly watching from afar was terrified by this sight, and didn't dare to show his face again. Very quickly, the demonoid army was completely wiped out. Realizing their side had failed so disastrously, an old man under Strom's command was forced to beg for help from Melia, the one known as the number 2 villain in the entire story. At this moment, she made a very badass entrance, causing the battle that seemed to be over to start a new, brutal chapter. Episode 12. The war is reaching its most difficult and intense phase. Every second, countless seriously injured soldiers were brought to Sicily. She worked non-stop, busy and disheveled. Her help was needed everywhere. Sicily treated one person after another, and though exhausted, she always kept a smile on her face and comforted the soldiers. Suddenly, a woman, so panicked she could barely stand, ran up and begged Sicily to save her husband. With her compassionate nature, Sicily immediately went to the scene. The woman's husband was severely injured. Blood flowed non-stop from his wound, and his internal organs were likely damaged too, so he kept coughing up blood. His condition was extremely critical. Faced with the woman's desperate pleas, Sicily hesitated at first but quickly became resolute and began to treat her husband. At the same time, on the battlefield, Shin sensed a very strange source of magical power. Elsewhere, Melia was freely unleashing her skills, defeating countless other soldiers. Her power was on a completely different level, causing the remaining soldiers to freeze up, even forgetting to dodge her attacks. Luckily, Alice and Rin appeared just in time, using their own bodies to block Melia's attack and save the soldiers. On top of that, they had to urge them to run away. Are you just standing there to get killed? Staying here will only get in the way. So be smart and get out of here, you guys. Melia dodged Rin's attacks with incredible ease, even without chanting any spells. This made Rin's attack speed faster, but it still wasn't enough to hit Melia. Even so, Melia still gave Rin some credit. At the same time, Alice also rushed in to attack, but Melia's magic armor was too thick and activated too quickly, so the kid's attack didn't do a thing. It was just a waste of energy. Alice thought she had already defeated Melia, so she turned to give Rin a confident look, not noticing what was behind her. A blast of power rushed forward and sent the kid flying to one side. Even so, Alice quickly regained her balance. Her wounds were also healed in the blink of an eye, and she returned to the fight. It's just that Alice was still no match for Melia. In just a few seconds, the kid was knocked flat on the ground. Rin went to help, but Melia used Alice as a shield, preventing Rin from attacking her friend. Melia mocked them for fighting so damn amateurishly. Just then, all the demonoids received the order to retreat. Although they wanted to keep fighting, the current situation was not favorable, so they were forced to retreat and regroup later. But like hell, Shin would allow that. The demonoids didn't even have time to flee before Shin sent the whole lot to meet their maker with a single attack. Shin wanted to continue the pursuit to stop the demonoids, but he looked to the side and saw Rin and Alice getting beaten to a pulp. He immediately abandoned that idea and ran over to help the two girls. With Alice as a hostage, Rin couldn't attack and could only passively take the hits. Yuri wanted to attack from behind, but Melia suddenly threw Alice at her. Luckily, Alice put up a shield in time, or she would have been burned to a crisp. Tony wanted to rush in to help, but he was thrown back and slammed into a wall with a single move. The force was so strong that the wall immediately got a large dent in it. Rin was also knocked unconscious right after. Witnessing her friends getting taken down one by Melia, Alice became furious and wanted to charge in for a life-or-death battle with her. Who knew that she wouldn't even be badass for 2 seconds before fainting, leaving the scene for a few minutes. Now, only Yuri was still conscious, but she was too scared to do anything. Luckily, Shin appeared in time. He quickly healed Rin and shielded her behind him. Rin woke up and warned Shin that Melia was no small fry like the others, so he shouldn't underestimate her. He gave the task of watching over those who were unable to fight to Yuri. Shin wanted to go one-on-one with Melia. He was furious that his friends had been hurt, almost losing their lives. This woman was truly ruthless. In that case, Shin didn't need to hold back either. After just a few moves in their one-on-one fight, other teammates arrived as reinforcements. Seeing the situation was not good, Melia knew it was time to retreat. She rushed towards Shin's friends to escape. Shin wanted to pursue her but was blocked by another guy's attack. Shin only had time to shout for August to protect the others, and then a terrifying explosion occurred right after. Shin had to use all his might to withstand it to avoid being finished off. Although he couldn't stop Melia, it's fine as long as everyone's okay. Everyone acknowledged that Melia was very powerful and defeating her quickly would not be easy. But the most important thing was Strom's true purpose in instigating this battle. No one could figure it out. August was worried that there was a bigger conspiracy behind this battle. Even so, the losses from this battle were also very serious. They had no time for regrets and had to get back to work. It turned out Melia appeared because she received orders from her superior to help that useless guy, who only knows how to cause trouble, escape. He had underestimated the abilities of Shin and his comrades, so they had to retreat immediately in this battle. Strom watched the demonoids retreat in humiliating defeat, but after this battle, he had identified a new target, Shin's existence. Shin and August went to the aid station to check on the situation. Mark and Olivia were still diligently treating the citizens, despite the demonoid attack, but in the end, they were all defeated. August asked the two of them to call for more support, while Shin went inside to help Sicily. She was still doing her best to save the critically injured man from before, but it seemed his chances of survival were very slim. Sicily even considered taking off her enchanted clothes for him to wear, but just then, Shin appeared from behind and stopped her. He said he would save this man. Thanks to Sicily's healing magic, the man's life had been prolonged long enough for Shin to return. You did a great job. Shin began to treat each part one by one, in order. And finally, he successfully resolved the most difficult case. She told Shin that she felt so useless while he was so amazing. It made her think she would never be able to catch up. She always had to rely on his help and hated herself for not being able to do anything. Shin immediately comforted her, saying that it was thanks to her that the man had a chance to survive. She had also successfully treated many other people, leading the citizens to call her a saintess. Everyone was extremely grateful to her. August reported to the King of Swedes that the demonoid attack this time had many suspicious points. For example, magic beasts were said to be attacking the Empire, but in reality, they never appeared. And why would Strom send the demonoids to do something so pointless? Shin, who had directly confronted Strom, was the biggest threat to him. Perhaps they didn't expect him to join the battle. Although August wasn't sure of their intentions, he knew he couldn't let his guard down. He suggested that the King of Swedes form an alliance, and he agreed immediately because this threat was beyond the capability of a single nation to handle. August would organize a conference between the countries and report back. After returning to the kingdom, everyone threw a big party to welcome the brave warriors. Merlin and Melinda were extremely proud that their training had paid off. August went to see Diziem to inform him that the